Good evening, everyone. I see by the little live icon up at the top of my screen, we are live on YouTube. So with that, we'll open our Prescott Town Council meeting for Monday, November 2nd, 2020. So I'll call the meeting to order under item 1 and move right along to approval of tonight's agenda. And that recommendation is that the agenda for the council meeting of November 2nd, 2020 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any discussion on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations from anyone on council this evening on tonight's agenda? Seeing no. So on item 4 and presentations, we do have one presentation tonight under 4.1. That's the KPMG team presenting the results of the 2019 consolidated financial statements. So we'll go into the presentation momentarily, but we'll just start off with a recommendation that council receive the 2019 consolidated financial statements as presented by the town's auditor, KPMG. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Burton, I think seconded by Councillor Shankar. So with that, I'll turn it over to our, well, you can put the treasurer hat on tonight, Matthew. So if you want to lead us into this, and welcome to our friends with KPMG tonight as well. Take it away, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this evening, I'm just going to walk council through a couple of highlights from the financial statements. And then from there, we'll turn it over to Lori Huber and her team from KPMG, and they will discuss the audit findings. So when we're just going to kind of dive right in, and when you take a look at the consolidated statement of financial position, there's just a couple things that I want to highlight. First one was cash is up by $800,000. That's a direct result of our reserves being up by $300,000. Our deferred revenue is up by about $500,000, as well as our taxes receivable is down by $220,000. So one thing that came out of last year is that we had slightly over $1 million that was outstanding in property taxes. This year, it's less than $790,000. It's in particular a direct result of 2 large outstanding properties, but overall there was a general people contacted the town. We've been working with them to create payment plans. There's been a turnover in properties that had outstanding taxes, so that certainly helped to drive the number down. So I believe that's the lowest we've been in 5 years, and so it's a good news item, and certainly something that we spent a fair amount of time on focusing on this year to make sure that that number comes down. When you take a look at accounts payable, it's also down by about $500,000. And when you take a look at what the year end at 2018, there was a large outstanding payable for the fire hall that was outstanding at that point. So that's now done and over with. And so you're seeing that number start to decline as well. Long-term borrowings is down a net $700,000. So it continues to decline. Temporary borrowings is the amount that we had for the fire hall that was part of the construction loan, and we are now moved that into a long-term debenture as of 2020 and are paying it off. And so that will then become part of long-term borrowings and then start to draw down when you start to see the 2020 number as well. A couple of other items to note. Deferred revenue, as I'd mentioned, half of that approximately is the gas tax. So we decided several years ago to save every couple of years the gas tax and be able to save it and then put it towards large reconstruction projects. And then the other half of that, approximately $280,000, is fundraising for the new arena. So if and when that comes to fruition, then we would realize those donations at that time. So that's money that's actually received as opposed to any that has been earmarked or pledged for that particular project. So all told, the accumulated municipal equity is up approximately $900,000 year over year. And we're also net debt is down approximately 1.1 million. So numbers moving in the right direction. We still want to focus on the taxes receivable, continuing to get those down. And then continuing to pay off our long-term debt is obviously key without incurring additional debt so that we can continue to move that down. When you flip over the page, you're taking a look now at the consolidated statement of operations. The annual operating surplus was $355,000, and the annual surplus, including capital grants, was $880,000. So just a couple of items of note when you're going through here. User charges was pretty much where we expected it to be. Government grants is $80,000 down because we used $80,000 of the OSIF to apply against Henry Street, which was the emergency fix that we had to do in 2019. License and permits, we had a good discussion about that in the course of 2019, and the building permits in particular being under what we thought they would be. I'm happy to say that as of the end of September this year, that we'd already exceeded our yearly budget for building permits. So they've rebounded nicely, and as we mentioned, if there's no one large project in any one year, then that's going to be a year that is going to be a bit of a struggle. We've had a couple of larger projects this year and medium-sized projects, so it's gone a long way to restoring that number. Investment income, obviously, that was in direct relation to the $1 million that was put in the equity fund in the wastewater treatment plant reserve, and that particular item netted about $200,000 in revenue. Now, we've also discussed in the course of 2020, that equity fund has been in struggle with COVID-19 and the impact of that. And as of the end of September, it was had a negative return on investment of approximately $48,000. So something that we're certainly looking at, but it doesn't support the operations of the wastewater treatment plant or of any of our water and wastewater. So it's not something that's going to necessarily affect the day-to-day operations, but in terms of long-term planning, something that we certainly have to be aware of. Penalties on taxes, that's in direct relation to the drop in the outstanding property taxes. And so you're seeing that that's coming in under budget and under the previous year, and something that we'll have to incorporate into the 2020 budget or 2021 budget as well. When you go through some of the other areas, one item of note, planning and development was over budget by $31,000. That being said, we paid out over $102,000 in CIP grants in 2019, and that is directly funded by the CIP reserve. So while it's over in the expense line, it then is applied for down in the accumulated municipal equity year over year and broken down from there. So there's not a lot of things I wanted to highlight going forward, but when you take a quick look at the change in debt, as I mentioned, that went from negative 5.6 million to negative 4.4 million. So we're moving in the right direction there by 1.1 million. And then finally, from a cash flow perspective, the 800,000, as I'd mentioned, includes the significant amount. We did purchase $1.7 million in assets. We paid off $718,000 in net debt, but at the same time, reducing those receivables as well as having a strong surplus here certainly helps from a cash perspective. So those were kind of the big highlights that I wanted to mention. Before I pass it over to KPMG, I just wanted to say pleasure working again this year with KPMG. Certainly it was an interesting year because we did the entire audit virtually. And so that included trading files through a great online portal that KPMG set up so that we could exchange the files, get the information to them in a secure and safe manner. And so obviously data security is a large part that we're concerned about, and especially in a virtual environment. And so we're very happy with how that proceeded, and we look forward to working with them again next year.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So are we turning it over to Ori and Steph for some comments now, or?
Yes,
I think not just here to say hello tonight. They actually want to toss in some observations. Just been reading through your report. So please, if you want to go into whatever you'd like to cover as well, in addition to what Mr. Armstrong just covered, and then we'll open it up for council for discussion. So Ori, Steph, please, thanks for joining us tonight, and take it away.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, we're very pleased to be here this evening to walk you through the highlights of our 2019 audit. It does feel like it's a little bit late sitting here in November, but it certainly was a unique year, as Mr. Armstrong alluded to. So what we wanted to do here tonight was highlight give you some of the highlights of our presentation. So the full presentation was included in advance of tonight's meeting. So I'll draw on the highlights, and certainly, as you had indicated, leave lots of opportunity for any questions. So if you follow along, I'll refer to the page numbers of our report and certainly go from there. So you can see on page 1, which is our executive summary with respect to our audit findings here this evening, we are essentially complete the audit. Our draft audit opinion has been included in the draft financial statements that Mr. Armstrong just referred to. We are in a position to release our final audit report here this evening, subject to Council's ultimate approval of the financial statements. Other things that you will see here in our executive summary speak to our independence. We should have conversations with those charged with governance, such as council, at least once a year that describes any non-audit services that we might provide through the course of the year to the town outside of the main financial statement audit services. So as you can see here, there's certainly nothing from our perspective that might be thought to encroach on our independence. We do not provide any non-audit services to the organization, so there's nothing that has caused us any concern there this year either. So jumping into some of the more detailed slides of our report, I'll stop briefly on page 3. So just as a reminder for council, our audit approach continues to be very much a risk-based audit approach. And so we stand back, look at the financial statements as a whole to try to identify where we believe there are significant areas that could have a risk of material misstatement. And the first one you'll see here is a fraud risk that is presumed from auditing standards related to the management override of controls. It's not new, it's not unique. It's in every financial statement audit that is done in Canada. It's mandated by professional standards. So you can see there, we've done the required work this year as we are required to do annually, and there are certainly no significant findings to bring to your attention. The next slide speaks to COVID-19. So as we all know, when COVID hit in March 2020, obviously significant impact around the world, and certainly financial statements were no different. So as you will see, if you've had the opportunity to read through the draft financial statements, there has been note disclosure included in the financial statements this year, right at the very back, note 19B, which is really a disclosure to say the implications of the pandemic happened subsequent to year end, so after December 31, 2019. It speaks a little bit to the impacts at the time with respect to the pandemic, and really does allude to a user of the financial statements the uncertainty that the pandemic does have going forward, because as we know, sitting here in November, it's still carrying on, and none of us really have a crystal ball to say where it will ultimately land. So that is new and different. And the other thing that I would say that Mr. Armstrong did allude to, we did complete our audit virtually this year. The bulk of the field work typically does happen subsequent to the year end. And we did have, fortunately, a number of technologies in our toolkit that we were able to sort of flip the switch overnight and make sure that the remote audit did happen seamlessly. And with certainly lots of help from the team as well. And as you heard here earlier this evening, Mr. Armstrong and his team certainly were great to work with as well, and certainly agile to adopt to the new way of conducting audits. Other things to bring to your attention on page 7 of our report speaks to some other matters. So just as a reminder, the financial statements that we do opine on are consolidated. So consolidated means there are other entities other than the town's own proper financial activities. So things like the library board, the business improvement area committee, and the cemetery board are included in the financial statements, as well as your proportionate share of the investment in Rideau St. Lawrence Holdings, Inc. We do not audit all of the components, in particular the utility entity. So we do rely on the audit work that is done by their own separate auditors that we are required to correspond with as part of a group audit each year. So we have done all of that work as well, and certainly did not note any significant findings. Page number 8 speaks to uncorrected differences and corrected adjustments. So we will see in the audit report, there's always reference to materiality. So materiality is set annually on the financial statements as a whole. So we set materiality this year at $300,000, which is the same level of materiality as it was in past years. So as we are doing our audit, looking at all of the accounts and balances that culminate into the financial statements, to the extent we find any differences in excess of $15,000, which is a straight math exercise, it's 5% of the overall materiality number, we flag those items and have a discussion with the team. But you can see here on the balance of the page, we did not identify any audit misstatements through the course of our audit procedures this year with respect to the draft financials that were provided from the town, whether they were corrected or uncorrected. So again, sincere thanks and kudos to the team for that terrific achievement as well. Last page that I'll touch on is page 9 of our report, which speaks to control deficiencies and other observations. So as your external auditors, we are required to zone in on the internal controls over financial reporting. So to the extent we identify any areas for improvement or any best practices, we will certainly communicate those. So in terms of any significant deficiencies, certainly have not identified any material weaknesses or any deficiencies in internal controls. However, if you've had the opportunity to read through the detail of a report, similar to past years in Appendix 3, which I won't go through in detail, we have our annual management letter that has been discussed with the team and updated. So last year we had a number of observations. We've continued to follow up on those again this year. We've seen some good traction on some of the items. Some of the items still have outstanding beside them, but certainly with a plan in future years to continue progress in each of those areas. As well this year, we've also identified 5 new items that we've discussed with the team along with our recommendations. So that's certainly something that will continue on our radar in fiscal 2020, but for the benefit of this group here, certainly nothing significant or nothing pervasive, and certainly nothing that has caused us any significant areas of concern. So with that, I will pass it over to Steph, who's an audit manager who's worked directly with me on the file this year, who wanted to just give a couple of remarks on Appendix 5, which is the municipal comparator information that we've done this year. Steph?
Thanks, Lori. So I will just take you over to Appendix 5, which is on page 18 of the audit findings report. So for some context, this is a new appendix that we've added this year just to add more informative value to the audit findings report. It's important to note the numbers were based strictly off of 2018 FIR information, and the comparators were selected based on discussions with management. So as you can see, Gananoque, Brockville, Smith Falls, and Pembroke were chosen as the comparators. And the first slide just gives some context over the approximate population and median household income. So if you look at the following page, you have percentage of expenses by segment. So this provides just a high-level visual representation of how the proportion of spending at Prescott compares to other municipalities. So you'll see that overall Prescott is actually within range of the others. Where there's some slight fluctuations is in the protection expense proportion. So that's expected depending on whether the town has their own police services or outsources to OPP, and also the relative population size of each town. And the other notable variation is that in terms of proportion, Prescott has a higher percentage spent on environmental services. So that's due to the water and sewer operations. On the following page, you have percentage of expenses by type. So kind of a similar thing as the previous slide, but this time categorized by accounting expense categories. So you can see that, again, Prescott is not so much statistically different from the other comparators. And as expected, salaries and benefits comprise the largest expense. In Prescott's case, salaries and benefits comprise a slightly lower percentage relative to its comparators due to outsourced contracted services, so namely for protection services and environmental services. And if you flip over to the next page, there we have the net financial position. So this is calculated as the financial assets less financial liabilities. And as you can see, Prescott had a net financial position of negative $5.6 million in 2018. And one of the factors, amongst other things, is due to the long-term debt held versus the cash and investments on hand relative to the other comparators. From a financial perspective, you typically like to see this in a positive, but then there's always other factors to consider, such as whether there's been a lot of capital redevelopment recently, and that's why financial assets were lower at that point in time, or perhaps the town is conserving financial assets to prepare for an upcoming significant outlay, and that's why they are saving more cash. Back in 2018, Prescott's debt was mostly to fund the fire hall construction project and the water pollution control center project. So if you look at the next page, here we have taxation as a percentage of property assessment values. So at 1.06%, you'll see Prescott is in the middle to lower end relative to its comparators. Next, you have tax per household. So you'll see that Prescott is actually the lowest of the group, but with the town having one of the lower household median incomes relative to its comparators, lower tax rate and lower property assessment values in general, this is expected. Next, you have debt per household. So with Prescott having a higher amount of long-term debt relative to the number of households, it does put the town at the top of the range. And as I mentioned before, much of the debt at that point in time was to fund the fire hall and water pollution control project. So the last piece is the reserve fund comparison. In terms of reserve funds, so Prescott's at a healthy amount, being in the middle of the range. And the good thing to note is that most of the reserves are in discretionary versus obligatory. So there's more flexibility with respect to spend there. So that takes me to the end of this appendix. I'll pause for questions, if any.
Thanks very much, Steph, for that. Some very interesting data here. One thing I just would note again, just to underline this for any media that may be watching or residents, that debt load. I mean, we always do put the caveat there that this is because of the significant investment in major capital, such as going back to the sewer plant just over a decade ago now, the fire hall, the park downtown, major road work. We had St. Lawrence Street. We've done Linda. We did Henry. Henry was last year, I think. So there have been some significant expenditures there. That's the sole reason for the debt being where it is. So I'll open it up for questions, but I'll just give Councillor Young first dibs there as our Chair of Finance. Ray, any comments, questions, observations tonight? Oh, you're muted, Ray. Can somebody send Lindsay over to his place this week?
Maybe Gory, he's closer.
Yeah. Well, Ray's having technical difficulties, so while he tries to sort that out, I'll open it up to everyone. Any comments? Oh, there's.
Yeah,
you're good now, Councillor Young. So any comments, questions tonight?
I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed that Appendix 5. We've never seen it before. And it does give you a better feeling about where we sit relative to other municipalities. Obviously, there's never going to be two municipalities that are exactly the same. But yeah, I very much enjoyed that addition. More reading, but I enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, Councillor Young. Open it up to everyone else tonight. Any comments, questions for our friends from KPMG or staff? Councillor McConnell.
Well, it's nice to know, or it's nice to see that once again that we have no surprises. There's nothing in there that shocks me. I know we have some long-term debt, but it's debt for very good reasons. And my compliments to our staff and theirs for what I would consider a very good report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Did I see Councillor Jansman? Did you have your hand up there a moment ago?
Yes, if I could, Mayor Todd. Just want to thank the auditors for a nice, easy, not easy read, but well-written report, easy to follow. Thank you, Matthew, for pointing out the highlights, because there was a lot to celebrate in this report, for sure. I really like putting a lot of my emphasis on the management letter, Appendix 3, and not surprised at all that most of the ongoing recommendations have at least been addressed and still ongoing, and a few of them were settled, which was nice. The current ones, I think we're in a little bit in a unique situation where our CAO is also our treasurer. So I'm sure a good workaround would be in place by this time next year, no doubt about that. The one that I wasn't familiar with until I did some research is the asset retirement obligation coming into effect in 2023. Is that something it's apparently, I should have picked up on it last year, but is that something that we are, the subtitle is, are we ready? Would that be any concern to you, Matthew, or the auditors?
You're muted.
Oh.
Got to remember to unmute once in a while. So the one concern that, and what this brings in, is anything that could be contaminated. So really looking at buildings that might have asbestos that would be remediated in future years, any contaminated property that would need to be remediated. And so I think the one that obviously we're aware of is the property just adjacent to the marina, and that runs partially towards in front of the fort. And so there is a bit of work that we will have to do in terms of understanding what that means from a financial statement perspective. It doesn't change, having to do anything today or tomorrow. It is now just recognizing that there is a future obligation to clean that up. So that's really the only thing that's on our horizon at this moment that we really need to focus in on. But certainly it's something that we feel is manageable given the work that we've done to date.
And the only thing I think I would add from an audit perspective is that we continue to educate and continue to share amongst our public sector and municipal clients sort of best practices and how to go about doing this. It was supposed to be in play fiscal 2022, which was getting closer. We've been talking about it for a few years now, but with the onset of COVID, all new standards have been deferred a year. So we'll continue to stay on track with the team to make sure that they are adequately prepared.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. Other comments, questions? So it sounds like
You're muted, Brett.
Put my finger off the space bar. So I guess with no further comments, we can return back to the recommendation. That motion that was made earlier is that we receive the 2019 consolidated financial statements as presented by the town's auditor, KPMG. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And thanks again to Ori and Steph for bringing this information forward tonight. The comparators were really interesting. It's great to see that, and it was presented in such a clear way with the graphs as well. And I think, as Councillor McConnell said, no surprises there, but it's good to see also that we are pretty much in the middle of the road where we should be. And the one cautionary area, of course, is debt, but we knew that was coming anyways because of the amount we have invested into capital projects and core infrastructure in pretty much the last decade, and then some, going back to the out of the sewer plant. So it's a pretty good news story, I would say, overall. And thank you so much for bringing all this information to us this evening. And I guess the contractual basis on this, Matthew, is it a 5-year deal with KPMG, or this is our 2nd year with KPMG, is it not?
This is our 3rd or 4th year.
3.
Oh,
Great. So we have 2 more years. And so just a question to the auditors, is there a formal requirement to state that or name you as the auditors for 2020, or is the contractual obligation sufficient?
From our perspective, the contractual obligation is sufficient.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, the province did at one time. I'm not sure if they still do or not, but there was a recommendation that we move every 5 years or so, or review it extensively. So that's just, so we've got a little ways to go there too, which is good from my perspective, because this relationship's been very good these past, hard to believe, 3 years, but time flies when you're having fun. So thanks again for joining us tonight, Ori and Steph. Have a great evening, and all the best, and stay safe and well in these challenging times. Take care.
Thanks very much. It's our pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
So moving along to item 5, delegations. Nothing this evening. Item 6, minutes of our previous council meeting. Under 6.1, we have the set of minutes for our meeting on October 19th, 2020. Recommendation being that the council minutes of October 19th, 2020 be accepted as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Ostrander, seconded by Councillor Shankar. Any discussion on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. 7, communications and petitions. Nothing there this evening. 8 under consent reports, because this is still a new item for us. Just I'll list the little preamble that the clerk has provided so nicely for us. All matters listed here under the consent reports are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. Should a member wish an alternative action from the proposed recommendation, the member can request that the item be moved to the applicable section of the agenda. So with that said, before we get into 8.1, 2, 3, and 4, the recommendation is that all items listed under the consent report section of the agenda be accepted as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Shankar, seconded by Councillor McConnell. So Kimberly, just so we're just basically taking this as the 4 items and opening it up for full discussion. That's the process we're doing with this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion is just to accept them all as per the recommendations in each of the reports. Most of them are for information only. If you wanted to discuss any of the 4 items, a member could request it. We could move it to the applicable section on the agenda. If not, they're just passed now by that motion.
With no discussion.
Correct.
Well, there can be discussion without moving an item, though, is what I'm getting at. Correct.
I thought that was the purpose.
Best practice is to accept the recommendations in each report with the one motion and proceed without discussion, but it's up to council.
Okay, well, I'll open it up as we move along with this, just so everyone feels they've got the full ability to have a kick of the can of all the items. So if there's anything under 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, or 8.4, please say your piece now, and we'll have a discussion on whichever item. The only part of this I want to be wary about, and I know they are they are straightforward items for the most part, but I just don't want anyone to think that they're not getting their chance for discussion either. So if anyone has anything on 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4, please, now's the time. Seeing no discussion, then I will return to the motion and call for the vote. All in favor? Thanks, everyone. So 9 committee reports, no committee reports on the agenda this evening. 10 mayor's portion of the evening. Just a couple real quick ones. Wanted to thank staff and everyone who helped out with the virtual Halloween last week. I think it was really well received. Had a lot of grateful people out there. Did some of the deliveries myself on Friday. It was just kind of fun to get out and take some around to a couple dozen or so homes here in my end of town. I think it was great to see so many people decorating for Halloween this year as well. And Kevin Bunce did an excellent job with the Halloween decorating contest too. Had quite a few houses participated in that, and a lot of really good spooky decorations out there. Also want to thank Joanna Freer and the Trunk or Treat folks from Centennial Road Church. Went back there too as well. I guess they had around 500 people or 500 carloads take advantage of this great service. A lot of people donated treats. Just really busy spot, and it's nice to see so many people out to help kids celebrate Halloween. And I think Halloween overall went quite well, despite the issues with COVID, of course. I know just from driving around town on Saturday afternoon, a lot of people had put treats out on benches at their front door. So contactless treat delivery. That's what we did at our place on Dibble. And Dibble was actually quite busy. It wasn't far off a regular year. Pretty sure we had well over 100 kids go by our place and take advantage of, I think there were probably 6 or 7 houses that were open for business on Halloween night. So it's nice to see, despite the challenges this year with COVID, that people were out and celebrating it, but in a very safe manner. We put some hand sanitizer out as well beside the treats, and virtually all the kids were using it. It's nice to see everybody doing their part while still celebrating Halloween. The other thing I really did want to make a note of tonight, of course, is Remembrance Day. That is coming up. This is our last meeting before Remembrance Day on November 11th. It is a virtual Remembrance Day, of course, this year, so there won't be the usual gathering at the cenotaph. Wreaths still will be laid, but it will be more of a private function there this year rather than the usual public celebration with the color guard. And we always have such a great turnout there. It's actually quite sad that we're not going to be commemorating Remembrance Day in person this year, but I just wanted to make sure to make that note to everyone out there that even though it is basically a virtual Remembrance Day in many ways this year, our legions need your help more than ever. So throw a little extra money into the poppy boxes when you're picking your poppies up this year. Donate to the Legion if you can. Become a member if you can, and help out personally at the Legion. They've had a tremendously difficult time across the country with the impact of COVID, and they need our help more than ever now. So it's very important as we move into Remembrance Day, and be very sad not to be at that cenotaph this year. But I know at 11 a.m. we'll all be doing our part and remembering the fallen at 11 a.m. on November 11th in our own way. Councillor Young, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to make sure that we do send a wreath on behalf of the town. I'm sure that's been looked after, but just mention it in case.
Absolutely. I think we discussed it at PSB last week as well. So it's the same standard wreaths. That was our decision, right, Kimberly? Standard practice this year.
That's right, Mayor Todd. We've placed an order for the standard 2 wreaths.
And we are looking into if there's any way to do a virtual presentation or something, just so we can show our support of the Legions, and of course to commemorate Remembrance Day as well. So I asked Ms. Castleman to look into that with the Legion to see how we can take part in a safe and responsible manner in this year of COVID. And before I leave, I just wanted to, I was asked, a good friend of mine, John Doran, asked to give me a shout out to his grandson, Slater Doran, who watches a lot of our meetings. I want to make sure to say hi there this evening, and if he's watching. So hi, Slater, and thanks a lot for watching Prescott Council. He's a lot of really interest in municipal government, and he's chosen to check us out on YouTube. So I just want to say hey, and thanks a lot for watching. So with that, that's it for me this evening. So I'll move on to 11, outside boards, committees, and commissions, and start off as always alphabetically with Councillor Burton. Please, Leanne, go ahead.
Thank you. Definitely, there was a big buzz around town for Halloween. I did see a lot of decorations and a lot of kids out. So it's really nice to be able to celebrate Halloween this year, despite the craziness that we're all experiencing, but nothing from me from boards. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Councillor Jansman, please.
As well, nothing to report to do with the committees or boards that I sit on, but I was pretty pleased to see the energy of our town for Halloween. And I'm glad you mentioned Mayor Todd, Kevin Bunce, because he seemed to, as always, get right into that holiday. So I'm sure that, and the town staff as well supplied virtual exercises. So anyway, all good. Hopefully next year we won't have to do this. We can go back to the old traditional way, but that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, here's hoping for some relief next year. Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Nothing much to report. The library continues to operate at normal hours. That's in the evening and on Saturdays. Walker House, despite the tragedy of the flood there, preparations are continuing for its repairs, and hopefully by the time this COVID is over, it will be up and running again as normal. Meanwhile, Susan has got lots of virtual things going on, and I compliment her on her energy in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just revisit the Legion thing for a moment. On Saturday, I was asked to be a member of their audit team. They're preparing their application for the grant that is coming down for the various Legion branches across the country. And I was just wondering, we passed a motion a couple of meetings ago supporting them in general. Would it be possible that we could forward a copy of that to them, that they could include in their package that they're sending to Dominion Command? I think it's only sporting to know that they know we're supporting them, and the people that get the package that are deciding on their allotment to know that as well. So perhaps with all 7 signatures on it would be nice as well. So if you could. And also Halloween, I operated out of the hatch of my vehicle at the end of the driveway and entertained about 30 to 40 maybe, and had a good time. Not near the traffic up in our end that there usually is. We usually top up around the 100 mark, but of course this is a different year altogether. And nice to see families getting out. Very few kids alone. They virtually all had parents with them, so that was nice to see as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ostrander. So Ms. Kassman, if you could take care of that with that letter of support for the Legion from Branch Command, that'd be great. Thanks for bringing that up, Mike. Councillor Shankar, please.
Thank you. There was a Chamber of Commerce meeting in the last month. It was held virtually, obviously, with everything going on. I attended with yourself and Councillor McConnell. We did the wastewater management meeting. It went fairly well, and I know there's a follow-up meeting coming up in a month. I took a drive around on Saturday to see some of the decorations in town. You know, this is what it's come to now. We're checking out the decorations. I usually save that for Christmas, but since you can't go trick or treating, you might as well go see the efforts that people put in. And my goodness, people put quite an effort in. And like, congrats to Kevin Bunce for taking the time to select winners. And we went to see all 3 winners, and it was quite amazing how much work they put into it. So it's a good sign, and it's a good sign that everyone was practicing social distancing with the bowls at the end of the driveway and the hand sanitizer. That's a great idea. So, if we get through that, now we get through a couple of more months, and hopefully 2021 is a bit different. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Here's hoping for a better 2021. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Brett. I wanted to update everyone on the issues at St. Lawrence Lodge. First of all, I wanted to explain what an outbreak is. And an outbreak is declared when there is one person, either staff or resident, tested positive. That's unusual for most of us. When we think of an outbreak, we think of dozens or hundreds or whatever, but in COVID case, it's one incident, one person. At this time, there are 0 cases among the residents. There is 1 staff who has not worked for the last 10 days. And since then, the rest of the staff and the residents have been tested. I say again, there are 0 residents affected by COVID. And according to public health, there are no residents or staff at St. Lawrence Lodge deemed to be high risk. So that's the update as of Monday afternoon. And that's all I have for you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Young. Good news there. Although I did see, I think there was a notice today about another long-term care facility, not precisely in our area, but up in, is it up in Lanark, Kimberly? Was that what was sent out today again? I saw it.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it was Carleton Place area, though, I think. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so it is obviously we are seeing some outbreaks into some long-term care homes in the area. That's always to me, it's the scariest part of all of this. There's some of the most vulnerable, but it's good to hear that St. Lawrence Lodge is seems to be quite well under control. So thanks so much for that update. So moving on to item 12, we have a number of items under staff reports tonight. First up on 12.1 is staff report 78-2020. That's the service delivery and operational review. That's the final review of that service delivery report. The recommendation here tonight is that council will approve the final version of the Town of Prescott Service Delivery and Operational Review and direct staff to proceed with the implementation plan. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Burton, seconded by Councilor Ostrander. Mr. Armstrong, did you want to take us into this? And we've really covered this heavily with Ted, I think, for a couple meetings now, but any last words or any last highlights here that you'd like to speak to this evening?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So really the focus of this report was on how do we take what we've learned so far and move forward in terms of an implementation process. So I highlighted each of the high-level projects and provided a time frame when it would seem a time when we could tackle it, but and then also who would be responsible for doing that. So from a strategic accountability framework, strategic plan is completed. Corporate performance reporting would be something that we're going to work on over the next several months and have completed by the end of June. Project management framework, that's something that staff would work on internally, bring to council again towards the end of June, and be able to understand exactly how we're measuring ourselves both internally and externally, and how we continue to evolve from that perspective. Reviewing roles would be between my primary responsibility, myself and Councillor Young, and then we would bring that to council for further discussion. As you kind of go through here, asset management plan is mandated that it has to be done by July of 2021, and that will be a collaborative effort between staff and council. Departmental master planning, that will be done between staff as well as each portfolio lead, and so aiming for the end of 2021 to have that completed. A number of the shared information systems we've already actually undertaken. The planning and building permit management we signed off on earlier this year and are starting implementation. That includes a GIS system, so that's certainly something that we're looking forward to, of having a number of programs all under, or a number of functions and modules all under the same program. Integrated Office applications, that's getting better use out of Microsoft Office and the different programs it provides, and so certainly we see that as being a joint effort between us and Augusta and or any other municipalities that want to look at that. Records and documentation, we already use eScribe, and that's certainly endorsed by LAS and AMO from an Ontario perspective. Financial system and asset management system, that's something that we would look at over the next year to bring back a recommendation to council. There's a number of municipalities out there that were all small, and so the number of choices that we could employ from a financial management perspective and financial information system are limited. However, if we were to band together and be able to provide support to each other, then we believe that there are a couple more options that might be viable for us to do. We know a couple of weeks ago in the treasurers meeting for the United Counties of Lees and Grenville, there was a number of municipalities that expressed interest in taking a look at something from a joint perspective. Common strategic initiatives, the Joint Collaborative Task Force would be struck, and to date I've had two members of council indicate that they would be willing to sit on that, being Mayor Todd and Councillor Shankar. And then my recommendation is for myself, the clerk, the interim director of operations, the economic development officer, and the manager of building and bylaw would be staff representatives. They're not going to necessarily be responsible to attend every meeting, and certainly some meetings will be more focused on one area than others, but certainly that seems to make sense from a staff perspective. And as we mentioned before, we want to make sure we stay away from any quorum issues, and Augusta only has 5 council members, so they would only be able to bring 2 council members to the table before it becomes an official meeting. So that's kind of how I've structured it. Certainly there's lots of opportunity for council and staff to work together, for staff to bring recommendations to council, and council to get involved in making sure that we're progressing as we should be on these initiatives. And so I'm also recommending quarterly reports to council to say, how are these things going? Are we progressing? Are we not? Are we stalled? Have we hit some sort of roadblock and therefore need a little bit of guidance as to how we can clear that away, and then be able to keep these things moving forward. And even after all of these things are done, I think Ted was very endorsing the fact that it should be an iterative process. So it doesn't just start and stop with one report, and we should each year take a look at the FIR data, see whether we're improving or we're falling behind, where areas of opportunity are and where areas where we're leading the pack. And so that's certainly something that we want to work in from a performance management standpoint and reporting to council, and to be able to make sure that council is comfortable with how we are progressing and making sure that we're using efficient and effective use of our precious dollars. So that's certainly how I've structured this, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matt. Looks really good to me. Just the only thing I would just want to emphasize is that even if the if the collaborative task force with ourselves in Augusta is 2 representatives from each council, as I think we're pretty much fixed on or leaning towards anyways, we just got to make sure that we include the portfolio heads on the specific items, as you mentioned. And I just want to really underline that this has to be an ongoing approach, and we need to have everybody involved here so we can enact, I think, what are going to be some really good recommendations for us moving forward, because we've seen some good stuff on the table so far, and I think there's a lot of there's tremendous potential, virtually unlimited, really, with what we can do with our friends in Augusta. So I'll open it up for comments, questions from members of council this evening on Matthew's report. Councillor Jansman.
Thank you. I thought it was interesting and not coincidental, good timing that this report comes in with the same evening as our audited statements, because a few of those ongoing recommendations that was mentioned in the management letter, 2 or 3 of them hinged on the service delivery review when it had to do with asset management planning and the tracking of capital records. So I just wanted to note that, and I was so happy to see that it was on the executive summary as suggesting it's a priority. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. Other comments, questions? Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I was quite interested in the public survey comments on the report. I noticed in a variety of different things that we've done in the 10 years that I've been on council, different reports have been done, different studies that we've undertaken. A lot of the remarks that we get from the public, always quite high in asks, is for more walking and bicycle paths. I realize that this study is in cooperation with the Augusta Township, and I think I mentioned the last time we had council in relation to the development just west of town that we're going to be supplying water services to, and that's coming up later in the meeting, that the opportunity was there, I thought, to begin a walking bicycle path up the west side of town if they were cooperating there. And when I looked at the plans for that, I saw that the sidewalk did indeed connect with Henry Street. And then there was a sidewalk that went partway up the east side of that property and that ended. But I'm wondering, and I wondered this at the last meeting, was if we could encourage that developer through perhaps Augusta Council to allow space for a future walking or bicycle path to go all the way up the west side of Prescott. And again, I know this study is in relation with Augusta Township, but we also have Edwardsburg Township on the east end of town. And we have an excellent walking path that I walk every day. As a matter of fact, I met you there last week with your wife, Sans dog, unfortunately, on the path. And that ends at Wexford, basically, and then you turn around and come back. But there's an excellent path in the old CP rail line that runs up the east side of Prescott in Edwardsburg Township. And I know we've discussed with Edwardsburg the possibility of draining that whole northeast end of Prescott and that section of Augusta that is buried in water right now, and getting rid of the beaver dams that I'm presuming are still up there. But that presents an excellent opportunity for a walking and bike path up that way as well. We're looking at building an arena in the north end of Prescott. There is no walking path whatsoever anywhere near it because there's no sidewalks in that area. So the fact that we have a significant number of people in town looking for that type of thing, I'm wondering if with Augusta, when we're discussing it with them, that we can bring that subject up and possibly float the possibility past Edwardsburg Township, or at least re-enter the discussions with them if we aren't still in discussions in draining that area. And I think the simplest way to drain it is straight down that railway track to the river because the cut is there. So that's my comments. It's a little off from the whole report, but I think it is still pertinent. Thank you, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. Yeah, they're excellent points. And the other aspect that ties into that is the cycling lane and paving the shoulders in Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal as well, connecting.
Exactly.
I know Mayor Malenka has been in favor of that for some time. There was a citizens group that was working at that a couple of years ago, and I attended a meeting. It was after our council meeting, but I did get there for the end of it. And I think it had really solid support from Augusta and Prescott. Obviously, you need to get the counties involved in that. So that's something I think that you tie in the whole region there, and you've got. He said there's some really nice avenues that can be explored to expand. On the drainage, I believe Edwardsburg Cardinal and the counties did some work there. I'm not going to say how much. Maybe Councillor Young would remember that. Maybe. From discussions with Pat, but I think they did some because I remember they had that flooding going right across Highway 2 there for a while, and it was starting to really get bad in spots. And so I don't know if Ray, do you remember anything like that? Because we did talk about that a couple of times, just the Tim Hortons crowd. But do you remember any specifics, sir?
They are waiting. Edwardsburg Council is waiting for an engineer's report on how to go about draining that. I recently asked Pat about it, and he said it still hasn't been received by his council. So they're waiting for it any time now, and hopefully they can make more progress on removing the beaver dams and letting the water flow to either Johnstown Creek or to that creek beside the golf course.
Yeah, that's something I think we're going to have to discuss that in terms of some economic development as well, because it all does sort of tie into that whole area north of the 401 as well. That is potentially prime development land that we don't own, of course, but there is some water issues in there, and it could still impact on the 401 ramp, which of course could have an impact on our own development pending there, as we all know. But excellent points for reference, and definitely something that in our discussions with Augusta, we've got to make sure these opportunities are looked at as well. Any other comments, questions on the service delivery review tonight before I call the vote? Seeing nothing, so I will return to the motion to approve this final version of the service delivery and operational review, and we'll see staff will proceed with the implementation plan shortly. Oh, I should ask Matthew, I'm assuming everything's good with, you've been in communication with Ray as usual, and they're all moving forward on this along the same lines as we are, so.
That is correct, and I believe they will be bringing their final report to council next week.
Excellent, thank you. So with that then, seeing no more hands raised, I will call the motion. All those in favor? Thanks very much. So moving on to 12.2, we have staff report 79-2020. St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival board member. Just have this for information, but Mr. Armstrong, we've had some developments there and some communication back from the board as well. If you'd like to just take us into that discussion.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we did reach out to St. Lawrence Festival, Shakespeare Festival, to just inquire about the discussion that what happened at last year's council when they made a presentation to council for additional funding in 2019. So following that, I received an initial response that they hadn't considered at that point, but then I received a follow-up response last week to indicate that they had made an offer to Councillor McConnell and to sit on the board and to return to a situation where previously, I think in the past two councils, there was a sitting member of council that sat on the Shakespeare board as a private individual, and that was able to provide information back and forth between council and the board. So that's my most recent information, and certainly provided the explanation received from St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival as to their thinking and whatnot, and wanted to bring it forward this evening for council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Just everything's in the report. I just wanted to mention, I've got to admit, I'm a little disappointed with the response from the festival. I have absolutely zero concerns with Councillor McConnell being our representative on the board, but I do have a concern in just the way that they basically rejected us having a formal member on the board. And you know, a few years ago, this worked just fine when we had Fraser, and it was an excellent relationship, and everything was pretty much carved in stone with how we supported the festival. Obviously, that's not the case now. Things have changed rather dramatically in the last year or so with the added financial support they did receive, and all indications were early on that they would welcome more formal town involvement on the board. And well, again, I have absolutely no qualms at all. Councillor McConnell would be an excellent representative on the board. I'm not all that fond of the idea that they want to appoint their own member there, considering the situation they're in financially, what we discussed last year, and quite frankly, what we provided them in terms of financial support. So I've got to say I'm a little disappointed in this, but absolutely that's nothing to do with the representative that's being suggested. I'd be more than happy to have Councillor McConnell be our representative, but I'd like to see a formal rep on the board for all the circumstances that have been ongoing there. I think we need to work together, and I'm not sure this exactly meets that criteria. So open it up for discussion. Just wanted to get my 2 cents in on. Any comments, questions? Councillor Jansman, then Councillor Ostrander, please.
I kind of echo a little bit, like when of what you're saying, Mayor Todd. I regret that perhaps we didn't make a condition to the funding that we gave them, because it represents, you know, as we all know, 1% of taxes equates to approximately 50,000. So it's a lot of the taxpayers' dollars. So I'm disappointed in the missed opportunity that we didn't make it conditional, because I don't think that they would have stuck to their rules as much as they are suggesting they are doing here now. But I guess a missed opportunity. But at the same time, I have no qualms with the chosen one. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. The town has, as they would agree, I'm sure, has always, you know, participated well in attending the Shakespeare Festival, even the most recent, which I want to say kudos to, the pandemic tales that they're now promoting. Just think that's a wonderful thing. I know a few people often go to their gala every year, that kind of thing. So we're certainly not, we're a partner as it is already. So I'm not sure why we can't have a voice at the table, but that's my opinion. And like I said, the missed opportunity is there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ostrander.
Well, I guess I have to come flat out and ask Councillor McConnell if he was asked by Shakespeare Board to be the rep, since it didn't channel through our venue. And I guess I'm thinking out loud, are they now picking and choosing who they have on their board, or are they still seeking volunteers? Or I'm a little confused as to maybe the whole gamut that they're going to seek members for their board. But that's, like I say, I'm just thinking out loud, and like I say, good on Lee for being on it. But I just wondered, I don't know, rather peculiar situation. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McConnell, did you want to comment on that now and answer Councillor Ostrander's question as well, just how that went about?
Well, once upon a time, no, I'm not going to tell a fairy story. I received a call first thing in the morning last Thursday, I believe it was, but I won't swear to that date, from Fraser. I thought he was calling about the museum, because we've discussed the museum a number of times, and he indicated he was calling on behalf of the Shakespeare board, and they had a meeting the evening before and had discussed the representation of the town and the town's desire to have a representative on the board. And you may remember it was actually me, after the money that we gave them a year ago, that suggested that we should have a member on the board. And actually, you will recall that it was me that voted not to give it to them. I wanted them to have the money, but I felt that it should be a loan, not a gift. And I was alone in that comment, and it didn't pass. Anyway, Fraser indicated that they had discussed the situation, and they felt, as council did, that something had been lacking over the last 2 years as far as a pipeline, if you will, an open-ended pipeline for dialogue between council and Shakespeare. And I know from my standpoint as a member of council, I was quite shocked when they came looking for the $30,000 last year. And if we had had the open pipeline that we used to enjoy with Shakespeare, obviously that wouldn't have happened. We would have been working toward that situation. We would have all known about it. So when I made the comment about having a member of council on board, I had completely forgotten, but it was you that pointed out, Mayor Todd, and reminded me and the rest of council that it wasn't actually a council appointee to the board. It happened to be a member of council who was on the board, and there is quite a difference there. In that respect, you were on the board as a private citizen, and as that private citizen, you are reporting to council in the voice of a councillor. So the open dialogue is there, but the official big brother command from the top is not part of that. So they gave me the explanation of their discussion and how they came up with a preference for me as a member of their board, and the reasons that they gave I thought were very valid, and quite frankly, I was honored that they asked me. Nancy and I have hosted one of their actors in the past. We've attended all their functions. When I had the store in Brockville, I always donated to their auctions, and actually have since then as well. And they felt that I would fit in well with the board, and I considered it for a short period of time and took a look at the options and the way we might have progressed in council if we had decided to push the issue. And I felt that the better result for both council and the Shakespeare board to remain on good terms was that if I did agree and join the board. So I accepted their invitation with thanks, and I informed Matthew, and they informed Matthew, and here we are. And I would be happy to entertain questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much. So we've had a few comments. Anyone else have a comment on this and how we should proceed this evening? Because we do sort of have a decision to make. Or we can move it forward and ask for more information as well from the festival board if we need any more clarification on their stance here, or what they see as a partnership with the town going forward. Councilor Burton?
Thank you. It is disappointing that they didn't reach out when we did give them the $30,000, and they definitely got $18,000 for the community grant as well. So we're almost talking $50,000. And unfortunately, it's in the past and we can only move forward. And how we do that is maybe with Council McConnell on the board to report back at this time. And maybe we need to revisit this when the community grants come up again as something to consider.
Thank you very much, Councilor Burton. The other thing I will add is that we almost certainly will be called upon to be the guarantor for their contracts, as well, as we always are. And while we've never been caught on that one before, obviously they're in greater financial straits than they've ever been before. And Mr. Armstrong, what's the value of that per year? We talked about it last week, but if you could just mention it to council, the potential added value to that if something were to happen and they weren't able to cover those obligations?
We have an irrevocable letter of credit with the Canadian Actors Equity Association for up to $46,500. It automatically renews every year, but can be revoked at any time.
Would that, if we did want to entertain that, would that have to be before the end of this calendar year so they can do their preparations? Or I know you mentioned any time, but
that would be probably appropriate, yes, if there was an intention to do so.
Okay, thank you.
It is mentioned in the financial statement, Brett.
Sorry, Ray?
It is mentioned in the financial statement every year. So.
Yeah, the value amount. Yeah, it's
Yes.
Just remind everyone on that one, because it is an added obligation that we always have done. Councilor Shankar?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to mention that. So, you know, there's 30,000, 18,000, and then a guarantee of 46,000. So it's a lot of money for that festival. And I can't help but feel that they're dictating to us what they're going to do. We're providing all this money and a lot of work in kind in terms of the amphitheater, getting it ready, et cetera, and yet they're telling us that, you know, and I think Councilor McConnell will be an excellent representative, but he's not Councilor McConnell on that board. He's private citizen McConnell with Shakespeare as his number one priority, not council, and they've made that perfectly clear. I just kind of find that I'm a little bit put off by how they've done this. I really am. Disappointed is probably another word, but you know, they come hat in hand. We need 30,000. We need it by the end of this meeting. And you know, I know Councilor McConnell said that he mentioned a loan. I also mentioned it should have been a loan, but you know, as it happened, we wrote the check. But you know, here we have now for a few months kind of been hinting at them to let's get a member on board so that we can, you know, really what we want to do is help them. You know, we're not sending someone in to sabotage them. We're sending someone in so that we can have a back and forth and we can learn and grow and help them succeed. So, you know, I like I said, I've got no issues with Councilor McConnell. He'd be a great rep. He's been a rep there before, but I just don't like the way they've done it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Shankar. Councilor Young.
Brett, I'm prepared to make a motion that we appoint Councillor McConnell as council's representative to the Shakespeare Board and see if it flies.
I'll second that.
Councillor Ostrander seconding. They've made it clear that that's not how they're going to look at it, but yeah, I think that's something, a motion I would certainly support. Mr. Armstrong, any comment on that? I know the email was quite firm on their position here, and you did quote the principal section that underlines why they're not going to entertain this. So this is actually us insisting that it be official, and it has to be official as well. They can't just, follow through and just appoint him a citizen member. This has to be, there's got to be some sort of official status. I just want to see how we would, make sure there is official status here as well.
So I'm more than happy to send council's wishes in a letter and allow them to respond as they see fit.
Okay. Councillor McConnell, would you accept that appointment and support that motion?
Well, you've put me in a very awkward position, Mayor Todd. I could send this discussion very further, but I couldn't do it in open council. And I really don't wish to do that. I suggested, or I stated that after giving it some thought, I felt that the best interest of council and Shakespeare and the good relations that we have had with them in the past would be accomplished by accepting the nomination, which I did. I'm part of the board. I have been accepted. I'm part of the board. I'm accepted that as a private citizen. I am not appointed by council. If council decides to push the issue and they want an official member on their board, if they would accept me as that official member, well, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But that's a big difference because, as you well know, Joanne Beckstead was a member for 4 years. Well, I don't know how long she's been a member of Shakespeare's board. I think they have a limit of 10 years, but I know she's been there for some time. But she was on the board for the first 4 years I was on council and reported to us the goings on of Shakespeare, but she did not report to us the goings on of Shakespeare as council's representative of Shakespeare. She represented their views as the private citizen that was a member of their board. Fraser did the same thing. I'm prepared to do the same thing. Now, given the situation that we have now that they didn't have then, and on any board that I serve on currently or have in the past, I have always taken my duty as a counselor in mind whenever I've made comments. So that may not be something that's been done before. It's something that I will do, and they know that. And quite frankly, I was hoping that that would be enough to put this to bed, because going forward, Shakespeare is a very valuable part of the fabric of our society, and I think we need to maintain it. I don't think we need to get a conflict going between our board and their board. It's not good for anybody. I think we should just accept what we have now, what's been done. I agree with you. It's not ideal. If they'd asked me 6 months ago, it would have looked a lot better, but it's done. And I think for the next 2 years of this council, that we see where that goes. And they know very well that I may not run for council next term, at which case I might still be on their board, but I wouldn't be representing council, or I might run and not get elected, and the situation would change at that time. But as it stands now, we have the same system in place that we had when Joanne and Fraser were on the board. And quite frankly, I think that's enough. If I was, I can't vote on this, but if I was a voting member, I shouldn't even be talking about it. But if I was a voting member of council, I would be satisfied with it.
So the motion actually names Councillor McConnell specifically. He's outlined that he's not comfortable with that, and I can understand why. So judging from what the comments around the table, I would hazard a guess that that motion would pass, but I'm not sure we should proceed with that with Councillor McConnell's opinion on not really wanting to accept that that precise nominating him specifically. So is there an alternative to that motion that just doesn't name the member, but actually requests a formal council representative, and then we can have the discussions after the fact with the board? Councillor Young, you made that. Would you be willing to make the same motion just with withdrawing Councillor McConnell's name from it?
No, I think they have selected Council McConnell for a reason, and I'm perfectly content with him there, either wearing a councillor hat or not. I think we're going to get the same information. He's going to give them the same input regardless.
But your motion did specify as a council representative.
I think we're spending more time than necessary on this whole discussion, so I was trying to put an end to it.
Well, the motion remains unless you want to withdraw it. So, and we do have a seconder, so. Any further comments?
No, if Lee would prefer that we withdraw the motion, I'm prepared to do that.
I would prefer you do that.
All right.
Okay, so motion is withdrawn, and we still need to basically decide on a course of action here. Are we going to insist on a formal council representative or not? Councilor Burton?
I think at this point in time, our comfort level would be to insist for a council rep, in my opinion. I mean, like Councillor Shankar said, this is almost $100,000 investment. Why are we not part of that partnership as we should be?
Are you prepared to make that as a motion, Councilor Burton?
Absolutely.
So Councilor Burton has made that motion that we go back to the St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival and request a formal council representative. That leaves open the option that it could still be Councilor McConnell. I see Councilor Jansman. Are you seconding Councilor Jansman, or?
No, I have a question.
Sure.
Through you, Mayor Todd. Matthew, I know at one time it was a issue with the auditors that if you had a council rep on a non-town committee, that was an issue. Did I remember that correctly?
I think it more had to do with doing the accounting for a non town entity, and then also having council reps on it. But I think we're okay with having members of council on non-town entities.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jansman. So Councilor Burton has made that motion. Is there a seconder? Councilor Ostrander seconds. Any further discussion?
I think you're poking the bear in the eye.
Well, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any more discussion on the motion itself? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, Mr. Armstrong, I'm assuming you'll be in contact with the board, and we can have a discussion about that, and note that there are no concerns expressed by anyone in council about Councillor McConnell being that representative on the board, but just concerns as were expressed by a number of members of council this evening.
As per council wishes, absolutely.
item 12.3 is staff report 80-2020 Edwardsburg Cardinal Prescott automatic fire aid agreement. Recommendation reads that council approve the Edwardsburg Cardinal Prescott automatic fire aid agreement, as we have discussed on a couple of occasions. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Young, seconded by Councilor Ostrander. Mr. Armstrong, do you want to just take us into a final review of what the terms are there and hit the highlights?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of kind of the financial end of the agreement, which is kind of the instructions I received from our last discussion, is that the base rate will increase by the annual consumer price index for Ontario as determined by Statistics Canada. Any piece of equipment that's requested to be added to the agreement will be used using the same formula and methodology to calculate the base rate change. Calls will be billed out as per the current MTO rates established by the province through the course of the agreement. So if they change, so will the rates. Each call will have a minimum of 15-minute call out per vehicle, which does now implement that minimum charge, even if there they were told or instructed to stand down after being called, as well as calls will be tracked to the closest 15-minute interval. So with this agreement, in an average year, we would see that the estimated revenue would double from what it is today. And we have also included a copy of the agreement in here that clearly identifies the responsibilities of both parties, as well as the financial arrangement. So at this point, we believe we have agreement between the two municipalities. Edwardsburg Cardinal also agreed to this in principle, and then staff worked on the financial wording, and both parties agreed to that wording. So we thought we would bring it back. The arrangement would be effective January 1st of 2021 and run for 4 years, so that as per council's request, it would be revisited mid-term of each council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Has legal reviewed this as well? Not that I don't trust staff on this, but we've run into a couple of circumstances with intermunicipal agreements before, and just want to be sure we're locked in here and we don't get challenged on something after the fact.
Yes, the legal was reviewed the contents of the agreement and had no particular issues.
Excellent. Thanks very much. So open it up for comments, questions from members of council. Councilor McConnell, please.
Are we covering the same area that the previous agreement covered?
No, I believe this is a reduction in the overall area, and Schedule A provides that.
Yeah, I saw that, and that was why I asked that question. I'm a little curious why that corner of Angelo's, the County Works garage, the motel that's just to the north of that, and the other houses on the corner weren't covered, because it seems like a strange omission to me, but I'm not complaining. I just found it a little odd.
So this was
as long as they're happy with it, I'm happy with it.
Absolutely. This was well vetted by Edwardsburg Cardinal, and certainly we're providing quite a bit of coverage there. So that's part of their determination of how best they felt the resources should be used.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Any further comments from members of council? Seeing none, and this is one we've talked about extensively already, so I think we've talked this one out, so I will proceed with calling the question on the motion. All those in favor? Thanks, everyone. Motion is carried. And item 12.4, staff report 81-2020, COVID small business grant, second phase. And the recommendation being brought forward tonight is that council approve a second phase of the COVID small business grant program to direct funds to businesses participating in Prescott's Digital Service Squad DSS program, or deemed ineligible to receive subsequent Digital Transformation Grant, DTG funds, due to their commercial zoning location. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Burton moving, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Turn that over to staff. Dana, do you have that one? Sorry, just take me a moment to scroll back down to the report, or Matthew, is it you starting this?
So I can take a quick crack at it, and then if there's any follow-up questions, then Dana's more than happy to help out with where I fall down. So if you'll remember, we did have a small business grant program for COVID. Part of phase 1 was for covering the costs of renovations, non-consumable costs due to COVID. And so with that, we received about $4,000 in applications. And so a total of $8,000 was spent by businesses. We covered 50%, and that's the $4,000. So there's remains an $11,000 amount that was allocated to that first phase. And so when we started working with the Digital Service Squad, and by all accounts it's going quite well so far, one thing that we realized is that some of the participants, while they can go through the program, might not qualify for the $2,500 per business grant through the program. So it really has to do with the fact that they might not be zoned core commercial and be on the main street of a municipality. And that's a part of the program that was designated by the upper group, the Digital Main Street, as opposed to anyone else. So when we started looking at that, there's approximately 12 businesses in the town of Prescott that would fall under that. While they're eligible to go through the program and through the analysis, they wouldn't qualify for the $2,500 grant. And so we thought that this might be an excellent opportunity to be able to help support them. We would go through the process with Digital Main Street to ensure that the only thing they don't qualify for the grant would be for the fact that they are not on the main street or they might not have core commercial zoning. So this is a process where Digital Main Street goes through each application, reviews it, makes sure that it falls within the guidelines of the program. And if everything lines up appropriately, then they would provide $2,500 to those in core commercial. So we would still follow that exact same understanding and guidance and guidelines, and wanting to make sure that that they would truly qualify if it hadn't been for their location. And so that's why we felt this was an important initiative. So there's a maximum of 12 businesses that we see that would be affected by this. We don't anticipate that all the businesses would be wanting to move forward with those, but if they do, then it would be a total of $30,000, which would be an additional $19,000 on top of the $11,000 that we've already allocated. We have seen significant progress this year in being able to offset our losses in revenue with our decreases in expenses. While at the same time, we did receive a $266,000 grant for COVID-related pressures. And so we did do additional research to find out if there was any preclusion to actually using the grant for such program, and there is not. If we were using all of that grant and asking for more money, then definitely it would be something that they would consider. However, we're not in that boat, and so so certainly not something that that they would look bad or down upon for us supporting businesses. This is a great program offered through the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association, and so we have put resources behind it by hiring an individual to do those assessments, and we feel that it would be important to bring all of those businesses on equal footing, just due to the fact that their address might not be on the main street. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matt. Dana, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Really just a quick point. Matthew really covered all the key aspects. You know, we really understand that in a larger urban area, this sort of distinction makes sense because you have those core BIA areas. But when you're looking at a community like Prescott, some of the businesses that are essentially ineligible for this grant are literally a stone's throw away from the downtown core. And the businesses that we're talking about are, they also go a long way to enhancing the appeal of the community and attracting residents and visitors to shop at their location, because they are destination businesses who in turn patronize our downtown core businesses. So we really just see the importance of the entire sum of our business mix as being very important to the attraction and appeal of the community. And I think it's important that we try and support these businesses and not differentiate between them. And as Matthew said, try and put them more on equal footing, if at all possible, because they are in such close proximity to the downtown.
Thanks very much, Dana. Open it up for council members discussion, please. Councillor Jansman.
And I just think this is a wonderful, innovative, inclusive type of recommendation. So I love it. I'm curious though, how did it come to be? Was it just realizing the injustice of the 12, or did somebody come about and say, hey, or are other municipalities doing this as well?
So it's a combination of all three, essentially, Councillor Jansman. There's an application, it's a software program that we use to communicate back and forth with digital service squads throughout Ontario. And it's something that we were seeing was becoming very prevalent across all municipalities that have those businesses in those outlying areas. And then it really came to our attention last week due to a specific business application. One of those businesses in the outlying areas had moved forward with the application process and received word that they were ineligible. And so we've had some back and forth correspondence with OBIA and provided some verification that they are commercially zoned and they are in such close proximity to the downtown. But based on that correspondence, we're getting the sense that they may be one of a few businesses who could potentially be denied. They're still going through the application process, so we don't have the official word, but it's headed in that direction. So we thought we would try to get ahead of it and maybe address some of those other businesses that are likely to be denied as well.
Perfect. Good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Further comments, questions on the program? Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As a former Main Street business person, both in Prescott and Brockville, boy, if they had something like this when I was in business, it would have really been welcomed. In those days, business wasn't done online, it was done in person. But so much business today, especially with COVID, is being done by computer, by online, by emails, by all kind of electronic stuff like that. And this provides a grant to get you into that if you are not already there, or to update you if you are there. And when I was reading through it, some of the things it provides for is online training, newer redesigns of website, some equipment. To me, it's just a wonderful program. And we have 12 people that are eligible. I hope they all apply. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Dana, another comment?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Yeah, something I just wanted to stress about that is this program, the intent is not to take businesses online and move them out of their brick and mortar spaces. It's really to help them identify new revenue streams so that we can really continue to keep and attract more businesses to our downtowns. And I just really wanted to stress that that's a key factor of the program. And by no means is it meant to result in the closure of businesses. It's really just meant to provide them with some new revenue streams and also keep them local as well.
Thanks very much for that. Dana, any other comments from members of council this evening? Just wanted to add that you just essentially the same comments, so I won't belabor it. But we've already had there's some good buy-in downtown. We are seeing people moving more to embrace digital economy. I mean, the one example I've always brought up was Katarina's. I had another nice chat with Nicole down there just I think last week or the week before about what they're doing with the digital outreach, and they've really expanded their digital offerings. So just to try to be competitive, and they're staying open over the winter this year as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting year for them, and I really applaud the hard efforts they're making to transform and get onto that the digital economy, and the more the merrier. It's a great program. So seeing no further comments, I'll return to the motion and call the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. And that takes us on to 12.5, the last staff report this evening in that section of the agenda. And 12.5 is staff report 82-2020, the COVID grant program for nonprofit organizations. The recommendation here is that council approve the creation of a COVID grant program for nonprofit organizations to help support the fixed costs of those organizations for 2020 if they are not eligible to access a grant program from another level of government. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Ostrander, seconder, Councillor Shankar. So back to staff for that report. Mr. Armstrong, please take us into it.
Thank you very much. So we had this discussion in September of 2020, and it was felt that there needed to be some type of grant program for nonprofit organizations. So we took a look at our community grant program in terms of eligibility. And so the group would have to be a registered charity with Canada Revenue Agency, or an organized, unincorporated, or nonprofit organization. So that means you don't have to be a registered charity. You could be just a group that provides some type of service in a not-for-profit environment. It's governed by a volunteer board or executive committee of at least 5 members or more, holds an annual general meeting at which the board of directors or executive committee is elected from the general membership, provides services to the town residents, and is located within the town of Prescott. That is slightly different from our community grants in that you would actually have to be located in the town of Prescott in order to qualify for this grant. That you have not been eligible for any other COVID-related grants for fixed costs from any other level of government, relies on memberships and donations from the majority of its revenue, has fixed costs for 2020 that are in excess of the donations and memberships that they've received in 2020. So that might be rent, utilities, insurance, equipment leases, things like that. So if those are in excess of what they've brought in from donations and revenue, then they would be able to apply for this program. And they've demonstrated an ability, or have demonstrated that they've taken steps to reduce costs where possible. So really what we're trying to do here is provide for anybody that's been missed from a nonprofit perspective from a government program, and it has to be a grant program as opposed to a loan program, that they would be able to have some support from the town to cover those fixed costs. So the recommendation is a cap of $30,000 on the total program. There would be one intake that would close on December 4th of 2020, and recommendations would be brought to council for review and consideration on December 14th, which is the last scheduled council meeting before the end of the year. So we tried to develop something that was straightforward, not requiring a plethora of information to be gathered and submitted, but at the same time fair and equitable, because we know there's going to be some organizations out there that have been struggling with their to make ends meet just from a fixed cost perspective, and that's what we're really trying to aim at. This would not preclude churches or like organizations from applying. There is no caveat in here at this moment that would preclude that. We know Legions are going to have a specific grant program available to them, and that was certainly a concern of council, as well as we have a couple of activity or recreational activity related clubs that do have large fixed costs that don't have a way to offset them or to defray those costs from a grant program. So really that's what we're bringing forward this evening, and more than happy to take questions and provide clarification. Thank you.
Matt, just before I open it up, and I apologize if I missed this somewhere, but criteria is not being eligible to access a grant program from any other level of government. What about organizations that have accessed grants from us in terms of community grants before?
So if it's not covering fixed costs, then that would be the specific item where, but yeah, note taken. A lot of the organizations that we work with and provide funding to are more variable and based costs. So, but more than happy to add a caveat in there for that.
Yeah, just curious, and I don't want to exclude anyone who might, desperately need to double dip, as it were. But I just wanted to make sure we're aware of that as well. If there's someone that has already received grant funding from us, this would be like a second go around. And with a limited amount of money, maybe that is something that needs to be added as criteria. I don't know. Just raise it as a comment. So open up for discussion. I think I saw Councillor McConnell had his hand up a moment ago. Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Matthew, I don't know whether I nodded off for a brief second there or what, but when you were describing the locations, you said something about Prescott. You said something before that. It didn't sound like what I read when I was reading today. Could you repeat that part, please?
Certainly. So provides services to town residents and is located within the town of Prescott.
Okay,
So
all right.
doesn't-
No, I got it. You don't have to go any farther. I thought provide services to, I thought there was something about a organization outside of Prescott. That's not what I read, and obviously I misheard you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Further discussion? Councillor Jansman. Teresa, you're muted.
You also aged a lot.
Silly thing. Anyway, it says all over the place that it's for 2020, but is it perhaps in our best interest that it would be, this intake would be for only the overhead costs for 2020?
That is correct, through you, Mr. Mayor. The intention is to only cover items for 2020. So only overhead costs that have happened and a decrease in revenue in 2020, and not to start defraying things that might happen in 2021, because we still don't know what that's going to look like yet.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Teresa. Any other comments from anyone on this program tonight? So seeing none, I will. Councillor Ostrander, do you have a comment?
Well, I just wondered if something like South Grenville Minor Hockey would be covered. They cover the 3 municipalities, more than just us, and that might take them out of that loop, I take it.
So that's an interesting one. I think what my question would be is, what is their fixed costs? So so a lot of their costs would be variable in nature. They don't own a building. They do rent ice time, but it's directly in relation to the services they provide. So that would be one of the considerations when we were developing this, to say, who are we targeting and how are we going after to be able to provide them support in terms of those fixed costs. So certainly point taken. They don't reside necessarily in Prescott, but certainly we would be able to cover that in a caveat if council so desires.
They do buy a certain amount of equipment for teams, particularly goalies and the occasional kid who can't afford equipment. They do have a pool of used equipment for that they purchased in the past, and they try to replenish it as they go along sometimes. But that's about it. They provide a service. They provide they rent the environments, of course, and I guess that's the way they operate.
So in which case, with the caveat being in there that the funds already provided through other grant programs, such as the community grant, would have to be in excess of, or their fixed costs would have to be in excess of that, or it would be subtracted from the fixed costs in consideration.
I hear you. Good point.
Yeah, definitely there will be some, it'll be interesting to see what applications we get. I'd imagine we'll get a fair number. And obviously it is only 30 grand. So we're just going to have to take a good look at the criteria and be interesting when the report comes back. So single intake deadline of December 4th, I'm seeing, Matt. So it would be back to us for our last meeting of the year, scheduled right now for December 14th. So that'll be interesting to see who's applied and what the recommendations are that are coming back. I would say, just as a, I mean, obviously we've got to stick to a fairly tight criteria, but I think we may have some unique situations here that might be raised as well. So anything that, you know, can come back to us within reason, I think we would want to take a look at. And I know, you know, staff will do that, but I think it is something that we need to raise for the groups out there as well. We don't want to automatically exclude anyone. And if anyone does have any questions about eligibility, please reach out and talk to us anyways. It wouldn't be a wasted conversation because we do want to help out those that have been hit hard along the parameters of the program. So with that, I don't see any other hands raised. So I don't believe I've called the motion on that one yet. Kimber, I haven't. Okay, so all in favor? Thanks, all. Motion is approved. Uh, 13 add resolutions, but Councillor McConnell, did you have a comment on that last item?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just occurred to me after you took the vote there, but we were going to have Matthew, I believe, check in to make sure we can actually do that with the money that we're going to use for that and not wind up having to pay it ourselves later. Has he done that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I had, and there was no concern or issue with doing that.
Great, thank you.
Good point, Lee. Thanks for following that up. That was something that we just dot the i's and cross the t's there. So thank you very much. So 13 resolutions, nothing tonight. 14 bylaws, 2 bylaws. First one up is 14.1. That's the water and wastewater agreement, 1686 King Street West, Township of Augusta. This is, of course, in relation to the property development there. Kimberly?
Yep, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I had sent you a revised agenda and I've posted online and in the e-scribe package. Councillor McConnell brought up a great point today. The proper address for that property in Augusta is 1686 County Road 2.
Okay, yeah, thanks for reminding that. I do remember catching that now on the initial. Am I using were there any other changes on the agenda? Because it sounds like I'm using an old one here now.
No, you're good.
Okay, thank you. So with that change to the address, 1686 Highway County Road 2, Township of Augusta, the recommendation reads that bylaw 46-2020 being a bylaw to authorize a water and wastewater servicing agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Prescott and the Corporation of the Township of Augusta for the property located at 1686 County Road 2, Township of Augusta, be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Mr. Armstrong, any final comments on this? I'm assuming since we're at this point, everything is proceeded smoothly with Augusta and Augusta's dealings with the developer that you can comment on, of course.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, actually at the previous meeting of Augusta Township Council, they actually passed the agreement in full and agreed to it. And so they have no outstanding issues. We're just passing it through bylaw this evening. So that formalizes the agreement and we'll have it signed in due course. I did pass along the request for Grenville Grenville Historical Society to be able to access the house if there's any items that they wish to salvage, as well as in noting a discussion we would like to have regarding the sidewalks on Henry Street to create that walking path that's more accessible and certainly a better quality or a better safety and for residents on Henry Street itself if people are to access it. So both of those items have been discussed with Augusta, and they're amenable to continuing to have those discussions.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I guess the only other question I would ask, if you do have any information on this, where the project itself stands, just for residents out there that have, do we know any kind of timeline on when it might break ground? Or I'm assuming next spring now. I doubt they're going to rush anything.
To be perfectly honest, I know that they're still working on the site plan control agreement itself. They have agreed to the site plan, but not the agreement as of yet. So you're exactly correct. We're now at November 2nd. So I'd find it surprising if they were to move forward in the next short while, but certainly in the spring would be a fantastic time. And it's a 20-unit condominium development, and we're certainly looking forward to having that on our border to increase the number of people that work and visit and shop in the town of Prescott.
And I guess just the one item to underline is the access is off County Road 2. It is not the development will not be accessed by vehicles within the town of Prescott. So no extension of Henry Street, no extension of Dibble Street, just so residents in that part of town are well aware of it. And if I could ask, when they do finalize the site plan, if you could ask Ray to basically just send it through to us as an information item so we can have a look at it here, just so we're keeping our residents informed of what's happening on our borders as well. Councilor Young, you had a comment?
Just a question. There are no dates in this agreement in the bylaw. So is it open-ended for the next year?
Yeah, so our agreement is with Augusta, and so if the development moves forward, then they will make the payment to us and go from there. In terms of how the developer pays Augusta, that's not part of contemplated in this agreement, and we're more than happy to leave that between Augusta and the developer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Any comments, other comments, questions from members of council this evening? Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. There's something that's bothered me about this from the start, and I've mentioned it before, but what I'm concerned about is the actual infrastructure itself. I mean, I'm fully in favor of us supplying water and sewage to this. I think it's a great project. Quite frankly, I wish the property belonged to us that we're servicing, but we haven't gone down that road, and maybe it's a little late to do it now. But what concerns me is 10, 20 years down the road, they're putting in the services. They're putting in the plastic pipe, they're putting in the water pipe, the sewage pipe, all of that, and that all has to satisfy our engineer specifications as well as their own. But things happen. We've had it happen in town, defective pipe, whatever. What happens 10, 20 years down the road? Something has gone wrong with the piping that was put in, and all of a sudden the road has to be dug up there. All the sewer has to be replaced, or all the water piping has to be replaced. Town of Prescott taxpayers are on the hook for it, according to the way this reads, and it's not in the town of Prescott. We haven't done that before with a residential thing like this outside of town, but it occurs to me that we have done it in the past. We run sewer and water to our sewage treatment plant, and we do supply other people on the way and from the sewage treatment plant. How do we look in those instances? If something happens with those pipes going to other places in Edwardsburg Township, are we liable to replace them, or is Edwardsburg Township liable to replace them? Or do you know? And that's obviously a question for Matthew.
So I can certainly speak to this particular one in Augusta Landing. So the town, like all properties within town, is only responsible for what is in the road allowance. And so as soon as we get to the edge of the property, anything past that will continue being the responsibility of the homeowner or the property owner in this case. So anything past the end of Henry Street will be the responsibility for replacement and maintenance of that development. If they were going to be accessing, because I think originally they were thinking about accessing off of King Street, then the responsibility would be for Augusta or Prescott to maintain whatever in the roadway, depending on which municipality it's in. However, because we are connecting directly off of Henry, anything that's beyond the road allowance on Henry is the responsibility of the property developer. Anything in the road allowance is the responsibility of the town. So, which is no different from how we deal with every property. When it comes to the pipe to the wastewater treatment plant, that's certainly our responsibility because it is our wastewater treatment plant. I'd have to look at the water agreement to determine who has responsibility for the water infrastructure. However, I can tell you anybody that's connecting to our wastewater treatment plant within Edwardsburg Cardinal is responsible for their own infrastructure and how it's connecting to ours. And so there again, if it's within the right of way for the sewer pipe, in particular, I'll talk about wastewater, then that's our responsibility. As soon as it goes beyond that right of way or that easement, then it's the responsibility of the property owner.
If I may?
Yes, please.
So if I've understood this correctly, that we are responsible for what's under the road in this development, the same as we are for what's under the road on any street in Prescott?
Only as it connects to our sewer. So we've had our engineers peer review all of the connections to our water and sewer. And so once they're confirmed and confident with the plan, then we sign off on it and then proceed from there. So that's all been previously peer reviewed. And so I believe, as you mentioned in the last meeting, they'll be working to about 30 feet on Henry Street to connect to that dead end where the water and sewer comes to now. And so for that first 30 feet will be our responsibility. After that, it's the developer's responsibility from a maintenance perspective.
Do you think, Lee, anything further on that, or is?
Well, quite frankly, I still don't find that clear. This is a condominium development, is it not?
Correct.
Okay, so in a condominium development, you have a condominium board, and
It's apartments, is it not?
Yeah, I don't think it's condo anymore.
Oh, it's
the
changed?
last I heard it was an apartment concept.
Okay, well that changes the whole focus on what I was going to say then. So the road then, when it's completed in that area, will be assumed by Augusta Township, I presume.
So there is no road to or from the development that will be in public hands. So the road, the entrance will come in off of Highway 2, and then it becomes a laneway on the property itself. And there is no roadway that runs up to Henry. It is simply the piping that will run into the ground.
Okay, so then Augusta Township is not going to own any roadway whatsoever in there. It's all going to be in private hands. So then we are not responsible for any future replacement of major piping or road past the western edge of Prescott. We are responsible for repairs if something breaks, but not replacement of the whole thing. Do I have that correct?
We're also not responsible for repairs. So that would, so very similar to someone's front yard, if they have a backup in their for sewer, we go in, take a look. If it's in the road allowance where the issue is, then it's the town's responsibility. If it's outside the road allowance, then it's the property owner's responsibility. So this would be the exact same concept going from the end of Henry Street. As soon as you are outside that road allowance, then it's no longer our responsibility. So the pipe that comes off of the end of Henry, once it's past the end of Henry, is completely the responsibility from a maintenance and replacement perspective of the development itself.
That's very clear. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm a little thick. It took me a while to get that. Thank you, Mayor Todd.
Very much, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Young, please.
Brett, thank you. I'm not quite sure that's the way it works with the water system, no. Because of Walkerton, legislation was changed, and I think we become responsible for the water system, even though it's in Augusta.
So there again, if someone's water main was to burst, it's delineated based on exactly where it happens, whether it's in the roadway or not. And part of the Service Line Warranty of Canada does cover water mains as well, if it happens to be on the property owner's side.
Okay.
That does, though, bring up, I mean, and I thought this was changed somewhat because this came up at Joint Services quite a bit, where I know Mayor Haley in front of Young, this was a burr in his saddle for a long time with regards to one of the housing developments down there where there was actually requirements for testing and so forth that were a little expensive and a little onerous. So I'm not, because anything, I think it was all regarded, and I think this was what Ray was getting at, that systems like this set up outside municipal borders were set up as basically whole new systems, or that had to be governed accordingly with testing and other criteria. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but it was at one time, not that long ago, and this was a result of Walkerton, and this did come up a number of times at JSC with regards to developments around the counties. So I don't know if we need to do a little extra research on this one or not, but I do know that was a criteria at one time not too long ago. Ray, is that basically what you're getting at with that, with the independent systems?
That's right, because I think we already service 4, 5, 6 houses in the Augusta area, just outside our boundary.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I think that was an issue for a council of the day after Walkerton, because the testing was going to be very expensive. Yeah,
it came up, I think it might have been our first term, Ray, back to 2006-10. I thought we dealt with this at one point, and we were actually, there was a possibility that taking those houses into the town of Prescott formally might have addressed the situation. And I thought we did look at that briefly quite a while ago. Not that I'm suggesting going down that road now or anything, but I think we did sort of touch on that way back when. But it's a long time ago now, so I'm not entirely.
And I don't know what we could do to protect ourselves from anything like that, but and I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do this agreement, because I think we should. It's just another thing to look at.
Yeah. With the added cost of doing that, it does concern me a little bit. Matt, did this come up at all in the discussions? Maybe it's just not an issue anymore, because I think they did refine some of those regulations after Walkerton. So they didn't have this extreme level of protection that, quite frankly, didn't make a lot of sense. And in this case, you'd basically be testing the same system twice, our own internal, and then also.
So it certainly hasn't come up under anything that we've been working through. I'm curious to know what water system Front of Young would be attaching to from that perspective. And I know that they did have some issues in Mallory Town, but that's on a well and septic situation.
And that could be it. Without it, the well and septic could be the difference. But I know there was concern about that added level of testing. That's a while ago now too, and it may not be an issue any longer. But I know it was a point of contention for quite some time. I can reach out to Mayor Haley and some of the specifics on that. I believe it was one of the multi-res buildings there, and I think they had the same with. Is it called the Maples back in Spencerville? I thought there were 2 or 3 properties that had this and required some extra testing. And I think it still comes before JSC. But again, I just have to look into it. Just what Councillor McConnell and then Councillor Young raised, just brought it back. I don't think it's a reason to not pass this tonight, but we should get some clarification on that and how this would operate going forward.
Certainly, we can seek out the clarification.
Sure, it should be a fairly quick question. I do think for some reason it's been resolved, but just something to look at because of those Walkerton regs. Any further discussion from members of the council tonight on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And one more bylaw tonight. Already discussed this, of course, but the bylaw to ratify this formally is the automatic fire rate agreement with the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal. Recommendation is that bylaw 47-2020 being a bylaw to authorize an automatic aid agreement between the corporation of the town of Prescott and the corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal for fire protection services be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any further discussion on the fire rate agreement? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. So moving along to item 15, new business. Anyone have any new business they'd like to raise this evening? None. 16, notices of motion. Any member have a notice of motion they would like to present tonight? Seeing none. 17, mayor's proclamations. Nothing this evening, which takes us to 18, the closed session. This should be a fairly quick item. 18.1 reads identifiable individual. So the recommendation is that council move into closed session at 8:12 p.m. to address matters pertaining to 18.1 identifiable individual under section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that the CAO, treasurer, clerk, and deputy clerk remain in the electronic meeting. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Shankar, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. So everyone watching on YouTube, we're going to go dark for a few minutes and we'll be back